Welcome everybody to a new GigaOm webinar. Today we will talk about hyperconverged infrastructures and how to maximize TCO and return on investment with an hyperconverged based strategy. I'm Enrico Signoretti, analyst for GigaOm research with 25 years in this field covering data storage, data management, and lately all the implications that data management and data storage have in large organizations, especially when cloud is involved. With me today, we have Dave Demlo, VP of Product Management at Scale Computing. Hi, Dave.
Hello, welcome everyone.
And Jody Harper, Senior Director of Technology and Infrastructure at Detroit Symphony Orchestra. Hi, Jody.
Hey, Enrico, how you doing? And good afternoon, everybody.
So thank you again for joining me, guys. And maybe we can start before going into the presentation. We can give a little bit about a little bit of background about your organizations and a little bit also about you.
Sure, I'll go ahead and join again. Yeah, my name is Dave Demlo. I'm the Vice President of Product Management and also Support and Services at Scale Computing. Been here for going on about 9 years. Prior to that, I have an extensive background in virtualization, data protection, data replication, and so forth. I sometimes joke my whole career has been making copies of things. So, glad to be here.
And again, I'm Jody Harper. I'm the Senior Director of Technology and Infrastructure here at the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And as the name implies, Detroit Symphony Orchestra is that we are an orchestra where we excel in providing a great classical music experience for anybody coming in the building. And so my responsibilities here are in the IT realm as well as building facilities as well. I pretty much oversee the architecture and implementation of all operational and business support systems here. I've been in the industry for approximately 20 years now, and so my background is mostly in servers and network administration, so that's where I pretty much got my start.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So a couple of things before starting. We want to make this webinar very, very interactive. So we will have polls and we will share the results with you during the webinar. Feel free to ask your question. You have a panel on the right of your screen where you can put your questions, and at the end we will have a Q&A session. So we'll try to answer all the questions that come from the audience during the webinar. The webinar is 1 hour long, and we will try again to make it as interactive as possible. During the webinar, we will give you a little bit of information on what is hyperconvergence for the few of you that probably still don't have a clear idea of what it is and the benefits, and then we will go through all the workloads that are supported by hyperconverged infrastructure, what is changing in this world, so what you can expect from this kind of infrastructure, the different approaches that vendors have in this field, and we will have a discussion of best practices. And on top of everything, it's really important today we have a vendor as well as an end user, so I will ask them to intervene as many times as possible, because it's always important to understand better the point of view on from the both sides of the spectrum when we talk about hyperconvergence. So let's start with a quick poll. So what are the main pain points of current infrastructure solution? So complexity, cost, both in terms of acquisition cost and total cost of ownership, day-to-day management operation, data protection and disaster recovery, and integration with the cloud. So we will have a few seconds. So we are showing the panel with all the questions now, and as soon as we get the answers. We will go through the rest of the presentation. A few seconds more. Good. You are very quick in answering. Very well. We are close. Just a few more seconds so that everybody can answer. Of course, you can put more than one answer if you have more than one pain point. Okay. Okay, very good. Let's see. Okay, as soon as I get the answers, I will share them with you. Here we go. So for 50% of you, complexity is the first problem of their current infrastructure. 33% talk about cost as the primary pain point, and 83% is day-to-day management operation, which is mostly aligned with what we find usually in people that still have a traditional infrastructure. 42% has data protection as a pain point, and 33% has integration issues with the cloud. So Jody, can you comment on this? Because you made this choice of moving from a traditional infrastructure to hyperconverged. Did you have similar kind of pain points when you started with evaluating HCI?
Yes, I did. Being in a nonprofit institution that we are, our staff size are always rather limited, and day-to-day management was A1, if not A2 would be cost always for me. But those are, if I was answering that particular poll question, CMB would be at the very quick mouse clicks.
And Dave, what's your opinion? So from the vendor point of view, when we talk with end users, so do you find similar, so complexity day-to-day management, one of the issues that they see the most?
Yeah, very, very similar, and they're highly related. Obviously, the more complex the environment is, the more, piece part solutions you've got to monitor, update, patch, more things that can go wrong. And, hyperconvergence really is, an effective tool to address those day-to-day management operations, because, the environment can be, more locked down, more, truly an appliance type, model, and be self-correcting and take care of a lot of those day-to-day things, and kind of, to a large degree, be set and forget for many customers.
Yeah, and also consider that also from my point of view, one of the biggest problems, as you mentioned, is troubleshooting. I mean, having several components in your architecture, you need a lot of skill, different skill from different people sometimes, and it's very tough to find, the problem, the issue that you have in the problem, in the infrastructure at that point. In fact, and this is help us with the first phase of the section of the presentation. What is hyperconverged? Okay, if we look at how the layout of a traditional infrastructure, we find that we have several components. Okay, we have the server. Okay, we have a shared storage. It could be a NAS, it could be a block storage array. Okay, we have a storage on a network. Okay, it could be Ethernet, it could be fiber channel, it could be sometimes you have both of them, which increases the complexity even more. And then you have of course the public network from which you access the virtual machines. You have the hypervisor, usually provided by a third party, and your VMs on top, so on which you run your application and your workloads. So Jody, did you have something like this? Because this is a pretty common kind of architecture, or there was a difference or something in your architecture.
No, it's like you were sitting in my server room while you made this slide.
Okay, and then there is hyperconvergence. So what is the main difference between the traditional and architecture and hyperconvergence? Okay, yes, you have the server node, and each server node has its hypervisor, so more or less it's the same thing. But from this point, we can see the differences. So there is a virtual distributed storage layer. Okay, so we can have this shared storage layer that spans across all the nodes, and you take advantage of the storage installed, so disks and flash memory installed on the nodes. They are organized in pools and shared across all the nodes in a scale-out fashion. Of course, you have the network, like it happens in a traditional network. Most of the times, there are also options to virtualize this aspect, okay, more profoundly that you can find with the traditional solutions and your VMs. Okay, so that it's easier in for several aspects. And I mean, Dave, this more or less the same architecture that you provide to your customers, right?
Yeah. This is exactly the architecture that we use in our HC3 Hyperconverged product. We provide our system as an appliance for the most part, and so it's delivered to the customer with a hypervisor pre-installed, our management layer and software stack is part of that. The management user interface is part of that and built in. It's a web-based management. Point to any one of the nodes in the system and start doing the tasks that you need to do. That's one of the things kind of on the old way we mentioned is all the management servers and all the different management user interfaces that you had to deal with in the traditional model that go away with a fully integrated hyperconverged system.
Right. In fact, in the previous slide, I didn't mention that you also need a management console that usually is installed in a separate server or in a separate environment sometimes. So what are the benefits of hyperconvergence? First of all, okay, there is this true software-defined approach. We talked about this virtualized storage layer that is installed on each single node and provides storage services to all the nodes. Okay, and of course this means that you can run on totally commodity hardware. You don't need a specific storage system to make it work. And the second thing is less expensive. I mean, this could be considered a consequence of the first point. I mean, using a system that has based on commodity hardware with software and make it also easier to develop and also at the end of the day easier to consume. It's simpler to deploy and manage. I mean, each node brings to the cluster resources, and so you just keep adding node to the cluster to get more resources. And of course, because everything is contained in this architecture, so you don't have external component, it's also easier to manage. As we said a few minutes ago, okay, one of the problems of traditional architecture is complexity of managing several different components, and of course it's very familiar way to operate the infrastructure. I mean, if you come from a virtualized environment, you find the same tools. It's just that they are better integrated together. And another aspect that I usually consider very, very important is that scalability is very predictable. I mean, you keep adding new nodes, or you can call them bricks or whatever you like. So each single node you bring to the infrastructure, you get a certain amount of resources, and on average, you are able to run a similar number of virtual machine on that node. So, for example, if each node is able to run, I don't know, 20 virtual machines, when you add another node, you are sure that on average you will have 20 virtual machines more, capacity for 20 virtual. So what else? Jody, can you go through this list and see if there is something that I didn't mention, or looking at the list, something that I didn't explain at best?
Well, I think one of the things that I feel like is worth mentioning is that you, in dealing with the HCI solution, you just have one vendor to deal with in that particular case. A lot of times when you're dealing with a traditional environment, you are dealing with multiple vendors to handle multiple different things as you're potentially trying to cost manage and things. And so you want to try to get the best bang for your buck in that respect. And so in this case, you deal with just one vendor, and it really simplifies your operations. That's probably an area I'd say that is missed in this particular slide. However, the benefits that you've listed here are all 100% true, and those are the things that I found to be the things that to be most important to be on my search and then looking to upgrade my environment, and ultimately why I chose HCI. Less expensive being a big piece, simpler being like the number one thing for us, considering our shop size is relatively small from an IT support perspective. So these are the, if I was pitching to my executive team, this is the slide that really allowed me to really speak to the benefits of implementing this kind of solution here at the Orchestra.
That's very good. And Dave, so from your point of view of the vendor that talks with many end users, what can you tell about this slide? So did I miss something, or do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, these cover the basics, and then as Jody added, a lot of our customers, the benefit they like is the single vendor, one throat to choke, one back to pat kind of thing. And I would say from the vendor side, and since I am responsible for not only products but support, the advantage of HCI on the vendor side is, when Jody or our customers call in, we know exactly what their environment is. We say all the time, the only difference between your environment and another customer and what we test in the lab every day is your application. So we don't have to go through, a 30-minute discovery of, okay, how is your SAN set up and what's your array structure like and what's your, your storage network. We know, exactly the environment and can jump right in and, with our remote access tools and things like that, very, very quickly get on, to the root of problems and resolution. So it's a great, experience, great, quality experience for both customers and that full vendor support level as well.
Very good. So what can Hyperconvergence do for you? This is a question that comes up very, very often in my conversation with end users, and it's really important to understand that depending on from the storage point of view, at least, depending on the workload, okay, and if we classify workers for capacity and latency, which are the most important metrics, latency defines the performance that you need. So the lowest latency, the quicker the time your CPU can access data, and biggest the capacity, of course, this is a kind of resource that depends on the kind of workload that you need. So if we look at what Hyperconvergence can do today, there are a lot of workloads that can be managed very well from an Hyperconvergence solution, and it includes most of the enterprise workloads. So ERPs, databases, business intelligence, email, file services, whatever. Okay, everything that is already virtualized probably is good for, well, without probably, it's 100% good for Hyperconvergence. And there are some workloads for which Hyperconvergence is not yet ready. Okay, this includes big data, HPC, so high performance computing, and more in general, AI and machine learning. This happens not because theoretically it's not possible, but because for most of these solution, the virtualization layer is something that is unnecessary. So, especially for big data, if you're running an Hadoop cluster, it's probably you're going to do it on a bare metal fashion. Okay, and on the other side of the spectrum, there are few workloads, especially very high transactional workloads in memory databases. Okay, for which yes, the mm, the size is very small, but latency is so important that any single layer you add to the data path brings a little bit of latency, and in this case, it could be an issue. And of course, there are also edge core application, but these depend more on the on the type of implementation that you can have from the vendor. And so, just to recap, all enterprise workloads, that means a very, very large amount of workloads that you can find in in an enterprise can be covered. Okay, and I have to add also another thing that for me is quite important, that hyperconvergence is maturing, and there are workloads that maybe a few years ago were not very good because the efficiency of the hyperconverged, but actually we are getting better and better. And so hyperconverged is expanding its reach. So you can find more and more, for example, at the edge, more hyperconvergent solution than in past. Not that all the vendors in the market are able to make edge installation effectively, but especially from a financial point of view, okay, or quantity of resources they need. But actually, we are seeing an expansion of the potential of hyperconvergence. Jody, can you comment on this? So are you in the enterprise workloads kind of scenario, or do you think to expand this to other workloads in the future?
Yeah, I squarely live in the enterprise workload space. We are doing pretty much everything that you see there. Given the things that we're responsible for and the things that we put on here, we are small but mighty. Is kind of what I say. We're playing in BI. We're obviously doing email and file services, but our CRM is relatively beefy to really support the things that we're trying to do here, and they are running beautifully in our hyperconverged infrastructure. Fairly soon after I put them in, I had a couple of people come up to me and said our CRM hasn't run this good ever.
Very good. And Dave, can you add something? I know that you have something to add here.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as our focus, I mean, we definitely started off in the the enterprise workload space, which is where people were first looking for to simplify their environment, and very rapidly saw unique opportunities moving out towards what now is being referred to as edge locations. So a great example would be retail type organizations that have hundreds or thousands of stores. They have some IT resources and requirements for applications that aren't necessarily appropriate to centralize for a whole lot of reasons we won't don't have time to go into here. They have little, or in most cases no IT staff, so they want those applications to run reliably, be able to be centrally managed, and generally they're not necessarily very large resources, although that's changing with things like machine learning, AI, computer vision that more and more might be running in those locations. But we found a great opportunity for the highly automated hyperconverged infrastructure to go out there, and for scale in particular because of our architecture. The fact that we basically run our storage stack approach, we could run on very, very cost-effective hardware. In a lot of these cases, it's just a few applications that are running out in the store, but they are critical. And so it allowed us to address some very critical price points. I mean, even down to providing full high availability at about the cost of a couple of beefy servers, which is often what they would have running out there. And we'll have some actually pretty cool announcements on new price points coming out pretty closely, and some new hardware line that's exclusively targeted at kind of this lightweight edge in the near future.
Okay, very good. So let me introduce the next part of the presentation that somehow is the right conclusion for what you said. So how big is your infrastructure today? So how they are organized, and less than 100 VMs concentrated in a single site, less than 100 VMs distributed in multiple sites, more than 100 VM concentrated in a single site, and more than 100 VM distributed in multiple sites. Or this is probably the most interesting to me. So I am aiming at an hybrid cloud scenario with VMs in multiple sites and the cloud. So if you want to, we are starting the poll right now. So if you want to jump in and put your answer, then we will go directly to the next session, because I think that it will be very interesting for you. So let's see if it's going on. Okay, first bunch of you already answered. The answers are coming pretty quickly. Very good. Fantastic. A few more seconds before getting the results. Answers are trickling in. Okay. Let's see what the answer is. One more second. Okay, so we have that 40% of our attendees have less than 100 VMs in a single site, and 50% of you has more than 100%, less than 100 VMs in a multiple site, and only a small percentage adds more than 100% concentrated in single site, and the same goes for the more than 100 VMs distributed in multiple site, which is 8%. And it's interesting that 17% is aiming at having an hybrid cloud infrastructure. And why I was curious to know about it, because I think that if we look at the market today and what it offers, we have a lot of discussion with end users talking about edge, core, and cloud infrastructure, okay, and how they interact to make a single larger infrastructure. So an hybrid somehow kind of approach to your infrastructure. So if we look at most of the core infrastructure today, we have a primary side, okay, for which usually we have the largest cluster, and that is connected to a secondary side for disaster recovery reason. Okay, sometimes this secondary side is also active, but the idea is to get the primary side backing data to the secondary side, or for disaster recovery or business continuity reasons. Okay, and lately, with the rise of edge computing, we have more and more small installation at the edge. Okay, these small installations sometimes run a small retail store, for example. Okay, they don't need a huge amount of virtual machine. They don't need huge amount of resources. Most of the time, we are talking about very few virtual machines, so they need to be efficient and small. And of course, we don't want to manage everything on the remote side. We want a central kind of management. So we want to manage everything from the central side. We don't want to do backup locally because it's too expensive, because most of these installation are not really managed. So there is nobody able to run even a backup in these places. So we want to copy data remotely and have a copy of the machines remotely, because if something goes wrong, we want to restart the machines from the remote site, which is our core site in this case, okay? And of course, there is a cloud now, okay? More and more often we are talking about cloud, but why are you going to the cloud, okay? Why somebody could have the necessity to run an hyperconverged solution in the cloud, which is already somehow a virtualized environment? Okay, there are several use cases actually. One is the fact that you don't have a secondary site. So you want to do backup, disaster recovery, and even data migrations to the cloud from your core site. And data migration means that you maybe have a big data or a business intelligence, whatever application that you run once per month, and you need the data synced to the cloud to make it work, okay? But actually you run this reporting tool for 2 hours in a month, so you want to have it on the cloud, okay? But you need the data, so you need to synchronize it. But backup and disaster recovery is usually the first reason why you do that for most of the organizations. And the other thing is that you bypass the core. So for some organization, having a central core infrastructure is becoming a little bit tough to manage, okay, also expensive. So if you have plenty of these edge appliances and you want, again, backup, disaster recovery, and even migration, you can choose to have your central site on the cloud. Why not? Okay, so you can manage also seasonality. You can manage a lot of things by having a flexible infrastructure and the connection between your edge and your cloud. Jody, what is your opinion in this kind of scenario? So how your configuration is when compared to this layout?
My configuration is, given we're a single site, we just have everything here. We started our infrastructure build out with just our main core environment, and then we really needed to figure out what we needed to do from a DR and business continuity perspective. And so that we've now graduated to, we have since graduated to a secondary site where we have that. So our VMs are now being completely replicated to another node at a secondary site. Most recently, within the last couple of months, if I'm not mistaken, we have since worked with Scale to look at a cloud solution for backup and DR purposes. And so now we are using a secondary site for local DR purposes, and then our core kind of business applications or business service are being replicated to the cloud. So we have a full kind of, we're fully protected from a DR perspective. And so that way okay. We understand we can still exist, you know.
Yes, so you have a kind of configuration that replicates the right hand of this slide somehow.
Exactly.
And Dave, so do you see customer interested in this edge plus cloud kind of configuration, or is it too early?
No, we definitely see quite a bit of both. Like you say, it's probably a factor of, you know, as more and more applications, you know, there's kind of a pendulum swinging towards this edge, you know, after having compute resources close to, you know, critical machines in a manufacturing environment, things like that, that's moving data, you know, back out to these edge locations, you know, and many of those, some want to continue, you know, doing that, you know, edge to core replication that's shown green here. Many do see the economics and the scalability of basically replacing that, you know, that DR tier with cloud. Often it's because some of these edge applications themselves are, you know, doing, you know, local processing with some of that data being pre-processed and uploaded to a cloud, you know, platform as a service type of thing. So we see both. We offer, you know, again, our HC3 product in both edge type deployments. We also offer basically it's HC3 in the cloud as a service that's full DR target that looks and acts exactly the same way as if you had your own secondary site with either a an HC3 backup cluster or not. So you can have the same ease of use regardless of physically where you want the data to live and how you want to pay for the infrastructure.
Okay, so just to recap very quickly, you offer edge core cloud kind of integration. So the customer is free to choose the components and deploy them wherever they need it.
Exactly. Yes, right.
Okay. And this is the same identical component. I mean, it's the same OS, the same
same user interface.
The same.
Yeah. We basically took our HC3 Hyperconverged stack and partnered in this case with Google was the initial offering. It's an offering we call HC3 Cloud Unity that unifies again the management experience, the replication experience across all these different silos, basically.
Okay, I see. Very good. So, and this helps us to go to the next part of the presentation. So, which hyperconvergence is okay for you? Okay, there are several approaches in the market from different vendors and both software and hardware vendors. So what I want to do here is just give you a little bit of information on what is better to ask to your vendors, okay? And so the first thing that everybody should ask is the minimal configuration, because probably you will start with not with a total rip and replace of your existing infrastructure, but you will start with phases. Maybe at the beginning it's a POC, at the beginning it's a small project just to test this kind of approach. So you need to start small. Not all the products available in the market are can start very small. Okay, for some of them mostly depends on the architecture, on the resources they need to run. They can start with heavy configuration, heavy nodes, just to give you the minimal quantity of resources available to the hypervisor and to your virtual machine, to your applications. The second thing is that after the initial installation, it's very likely that you will like it and you want to expand the cluster. Okay, and it's very important to understand since the very beginning what are the constraints. Okay, for some solution in the market, for example, the node must be identical, and this could create a few issues because you are forced to buy always the same kind of node. Especially over time, it becomes a big issue because the system becomes a little bit less efficient. You have to go through internal migrations of data or activities of rebalancing that are not always really efficient or really fast. So always look if you can expand the cluster sometimes only for capacity, for example, or with nodes with different CPUs. Okay, different generation nodes are supported in the same cluster. Okay, this is very important. And then there is another thing that is licensing. Okay, what are you buying today? Especially if you're buying a subscription. Okay, check how the subscription is managed. Okay, is it managed by capacity? Is it managed for the number of VMs? Is it managed for the number of nodes? Okay, what is important for you? Okay, and what happens after the first year, the second year, or the third year? Okay, are you able to keep the same level of subscription? Is there entry level kind of subscription, and then after a few nodes there is a data center like subscription that could hurt your your wallet, most of everything, because it's not sure that you will use the additional feature, if any, but actually you have to pay more for what you use. And the other thing is hedge core cloud. So plan for the future. As Jody said, they started with a very simple traditional kind of layout, and now they are moving to an core plus cloud kind of hybrid infrastructure. Okay, so always think that in the future you don't know what you can find around the corner, what your business will require in the future. So you have to choose a flexible solution. Okay, and then service and support. Okay, this is very important because again, for some solutions it's harder than for others. So always check maybe with other customers the level of service and support. Okay, what you can expect to happen when you open a ticket. Okay, is hardware separated by software, for example? Can you access to a single support desk? These kind of features are very, especially if you have a small team to manage your IT infrastructure. This could be very beneficial. This could be very important for you and beneficial if you have a single point of contact. And my opinion is also that you have to ask a demo. Okay, even if on paper it works, there are several things that you should look for. Okay, ease of use. Okay, how the interface is organized. You know, there are several questions that pop up while you see things happening during a demo. For example, and sometimes I would ask also the basic question during the demo. So try to do an installation, try to do another expansion, try to do these kind of things. Okay, try to make a system fail and see what happens. These kind of things are very useful, especially if you are not expert, especially if your team is small. So you want to understand at the very beginning what is going to happen. Jody, I don't know if you have something to add on this. You went through a process of evaluation when you choose scale computer. So what were your main evaluation criteria at that time?
Well, the only thing that is missing from here that I didn't, that I also took into consideration was price. Because given my environment, that was very important for me. But I would tell you that as your last bullet point, it really has the exclamation mark, and I stress the same thing. Any solution that you're going to look at is really going to try to really wine and dine you with a lot of talk and a lot of speaking, a lot of white papers and things like that. And the proof is in the pudding. And when you actually get the ability to see it, touch it, and play with it, and really put it through its paces, you'll really see what separates any one particular HCI solution from another, which is why I went the route I went. The demo piece here was extremely, it was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. Being in this industry for as long as I have, the demo was awesome. And the service and the support side of thing as well was extremely important due to my small size and knowing that if I'm going to incur a problem, I want to know that I'm able to get that support that I need fairly quickly. And I think Dave can mention their support side of things, but for me, knowing that I was able to get in touch with somebody at any point in time in less than a couple of minutes, and I could speak to a live person and not get transferred around or bounced around, but within a couple of minutes being able to talk to somebody about my problem and have it resolved, those things were extremely important for me.
So for you, ease of use and service and support were the key, well, alongside price, of course, but
yes,
these were the key for your evaluation. Okay, and Dave, I know that you're biased in this case because you're a vendor, but what's your opinion on this slide? So what your customers ask to you when they do this kind of evaluation?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, as Jody mentioned, I mean, we always, strongly encourage get a demo because, it's hard to, you can say ease of use all you want, but if you're used to managing a complex infrastructure, it's hard to really picture how simple things can be by, converging everything, by fully integrating, by, building an automation until you see the demonstration. And we actually have videos online. I think we have a 5-year-old girl creating a virtual machine, and it's literally a couple clicks, not much knowledge, and kids these days are amazing, but that kind of simplicity that really has been a design goal, value of scale computing since day one to, really simplify the technology, make it super easy. So that's a key point. The demo, I think, for any system brings that out and lets you know kind of what you're getting in for. As Jody mentioned, cost, and I think that's where the configuration and the expansion options really come in. This may come as a surprise. We've actually routinely have conversations with customers that are looking for quotes and designing for infrastructure refresh where they want to, forecast, well, here's what I think I'm going to need over the next 5 years, and let me buy it all right now. And sometimes that makes sense, for particular organizations, but, with the flexible expansion capabilities, with the ability to start small and just bolt on as you need. And in many cases the add-on nodes that you're going to buy in a couple of years are going to be better, faster, cheaper. That's really the whole point. So if you don't need those today, knowing that you can easily add them in with just a couple of clicks, a few minutes to expand the capacity and resources of the system, gives you a lot of flexibility on cost and planning and so forth. So and ultimately avoid surprises later. I mean, we sell everything as an appliance, so the license is built in. Most of our customers buy 3 to 5 years of full support and software and updates with their systems, so they're kind of locked in and do know what they need from that standpoint. So yeah, I think these are all great questions.
Okay, very good. So let's go to the next phase of our presentation. I have another poll. At what stage is hyperconvergence adoption in your organization? So, and the possible answers are: I'm okay with my infrastructure, but I'm curious to know more. I'm evaluating it for the future. I'm already in an advanced state of my evaluation process. I have already adopted HCI, and HCI is not for me, definitely. Okay, I hope not the last one, but please start with the poll and to put your data in. Okay, it will take a few seconds to get the data. Okay, again, you are pretty quick. The results are coming in. A few more seconds to get them done. Okay, a few more. I have to give the evaluation, and I think it's okay. Here we go. In a few seconds, we will have the complete result that I will share with you, and here we are. So 1/3 of the attendees are evaluating hyperconvergence. Almost 20% are already in a advanced evaluation process. 45% are already users, and fortunately, none of you thinks that hyperconvergence is not for them. So it is very good. And let's start with question and answers. And so the first question, I think, is for Dave. The question is, so we talked a lot about software defined, but you offer an appliance. Why that? I don't know, Dave, if you have a question, an answer for this.
Sure. No. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, first of all, yes, it is software. The reason we offer it as an appliance is really simple. I mean, it's mainly what the vast majority of our customers want in order to get that single vendor experience. We provide full support for the entire software stack, updates on the hardware, the routine things like drive replacements. You don't gotta make multiple calls, things like that. So it's back to that one throat to choke, one back to pat kind of thing. Further, as I think I mentioned earlier, there is no customer running a scale HC3 configuration that the exact configuration they're running is not in our labs, being regression tested of every single change, every single release, every single build that we do on a regular basis. And you would be amazed the amount of little weird things you find with, well, actually most people in IT probably would not be amazed by, the weird things you find of, oh, this firmware on this SAS controller and, this queue depth under this kind of load. Having a very, very controlled appliance-like experience allows us to, highly vet those kinds of things and ensure, consistent quality performance, year after year on a wide variety of hardware. Now, what I will say is, we are expanding, the hardware partnerships that we work with. We recently announced a expanded relationship with Lenovo. So Scale HC3 appliances are available through Lenovo directly on the Lenovo configurator. They still everything that I said previously about the configurations that are distributed in that relationship are distributed as appliances. You can call Scale up directly for full hardware software support. In that particular case, if it is a Lenovo motherboard component that needs to be serviced, we'll actually engage Lenovo and establish those cases to get those things resolved. So we've been able to branch out, still maintain that tight control on quality, and still maintain the service level, the simplified service level that our customers want and expect.
Okay, and then I have another question. This is very long, so I'm trying to synthesize a little bit. And I think it's for Jody. So how much did it take to move from a traditional infrastructure to an hyperconverged infrastructure? I think we are talking about the migration process and all the operation that you need to install and deploy the first installation.
If I think I understand the question, we were in a traditional type setup with the Hyper-V infrastructure in place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, getting the scale units in place, as Dave mentioned before, the videos that they have up with people being able to install those units fairly quickly is 100% true. I was able to get my 3-node system when I first got it a couple of years ago now. I got it up and racked in about an hour, up racked on the network and configured and ready to go within an hour. So 3 nodes. It was relatively quick, and I was shocked at how quickly it took me to do so. And the migration was relatively easy as well. From Hyper-V over to the Scale units, there's a migration utility that's provided by Scale. They have 2 different flavors, and with one of them is able to do a live migration. And so it was just basically checking a couple boxes saying I want to move these particular VMs over live. Once it completed the process, I had to turn off the other one, or automatically turn off the other one, rebooted it, and then it came right back up. So that was probably a downtime of what, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute for the reboot to happen. The remaining nodes that I didn't need to do in a always on perspective, those were just as fast as it took me to copy the data across the network. And so at that point, we're talking about anywhere from servers that are 40 gig over to about 500 gig, depending. Those happened over the holiday break for me. So it was easy for me to just sit there over, I think it was over Christmas Eve, when I think I moved over a lot of them. Kind of got me away from my family, so I was kind of happy about that in some ways. But it was able to sit there with a laptop and just babysit and watch the servers just kind of cross over. And so once they moved over, I had to just turn them off on the Hyper-V and then start them up on the Scale, and they were up and running, no problem. So the migration utilities that were provided from them and the processes that were provided as well were flawless, fairly easy, fairly simple to get up and get going.
Okay, that sounds very, very good.
Yeah, another thing I'd like to point out too on that is we do also offer services that, either we offer a quick start migration service that, if you've never done migration, you want to learn how to use the tools, we'll kind of walk you through one, teach you how to do the rest. And we do also offer a full migration service. If you just want, hey, I've got these X number of machines and you can pay our services team to do that remotely, do that migration. They can do it all remotely, connect in and get that done for you as well.
There is another question about the impact of on performance when you need to expand the cluster, so data rebalancing. The answer in general terms is really depends on the implementation. All the vendors are trying to make this process as less impactful as possible, but it really depends on the implementation, and you have to try it. I don't know if you have, Dave, something to say, how is your approach to data rebalancing and performance rebalancing when you add a new node to the cluster?
Sure. Yeah, typically on a new node add, it is not required to do any kind of rebalancing. We have algorithms that are built in automatically to kind of properly adjust the weight for any kind of new storage allocations to over time bring things into proper balance. There are some corner cases where a rebalance process is suggested to even out IO hotspots or things like that. Typically in a more recent configuration where you have flash drives, things like that, that's generally a non-issue at all. So it's rare that you would rebalance in any kind of flash or hybrid flash disk-based configuration. As a matter of fact, what more often is the case, and this is something that is fairly unique to our architecture and the way we wide stripe IO across all the disks in all the nodes. There's no like primary, secondary, fixed location for any VM. We've actually done demos. I think we have some videos online where in many cases, and by design, adding a node could actually make existing workloads go faster, because now they have more disks that they can, if it's a write-intensive application and it's actually bottlenecked by the amount of IO it can do or the number of nodes that it can distribute the IO load across, adding a node can actually make an existing application just by that process go faster immediately.
Okay, very good. So I think we are almost at the top of the hour, and I want just to give a couple of information to wrap up this webinar. First of all, if you want to keep the conversation going with us, I am E Signoretti on the Twitters, so ESIGNORETTI, so my surname plus the first letter of my name, which is probably better than spelling all of it. And what's your Twitter handle, if you have any, guys?
I'm at David Demlow, David DEMLOW on Twitter.
And I am at actually, I don't remember my Twitter handle. I think it's Jody Harper. I think it's Jody Harper 1, JODYHARPER, and the number 1.
Okay, fantastic. So if you want to contact each one of us and ask more and talk more about Hyperconvergence and get our opinion on it, just send us a tweet and we will follow up on this. And for the rest, you will receive an email in a couple of days with a recording and a summary of this session. And that's it. Thank you guys again for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you, and you helping me to drive a very, very interesting webinar.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.